Welcome to A Revelation of Jesus. In the first two videos of this series, we looked at some of the biblical tools that can help us understand the deep and complicated book of Revelation. In this video, we take a brief look at the visions recorded in the book of Daniel, which are the part of the Bible most like Revelation. Several of Revelation's most important passages borrow symbols and concepts from Daniel and are impossible to understand without comparing them with Daniel. We will be taking a very brief overview of Daniel's visions in chapters 2, 7, 8, and 11, and it may feel like drinking from a fire hose, leaving you with many unanswered questions. We will study these visions in more detail when we get to the corresponding sections of Revelation, but this overview will give you a framework for your study. Daniel was a teenage member of the royal family of Judah, who was taken captive in 605 BC by the army of the Babylonian Empire under the rulership of King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel, along with his three friends, were put in training to be royal advisors. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a terrifying dream in which he saw a huge metal image of a man out of various metals. The head was gold, the chest was silver, the belly was brass, the thighs were of iron, and the lower legs and feet were a mixture of iron and clay. As the king watched, a great stone fell from heaven, struck the image on its feet, and destroyed it. The king demanded that his advisors interpret the dream. In order to make sure that they weren't cheating, they were required to tell the king what they had seen in the dream, as well as the interpretation. God gave Daniel a night vision in which he was able to see the metal image and also understand what it symbolized. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar that he himself, as the head of the Babylonian Empire, was the head of gold. Babylon was only one of many Middle Eastern empires, but it was very relevant to God's chosen people because Babylon had conquered the Promised Land and destroyed Jerusalem and the Temple. After you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. History tells us that the Persian Empire, symbolized by the chest of silver, defeated Babylon in 539 BC. Persia also ruled over the homeland of the Jewish people. Then another, a third kingdom of bronze, shall rule over all the earth. Persia was defeated by the Greek Hellenic army under the leadership of Alexander the Great in 331 BC. His kingdom was symbolized by the image's belly of brass. Hellenic kingdoms ruled over the Jewish homeland during the time between the Old and New Testaments. The fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. That kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. The Roman Empire, symbolized by the thighs of iron, defeated the Greek kingdom and ruled at the time of Jesus. The Jewish leaders rejected Jesus, and God allowed Rome to destroy Jerusalem in AD 70. Now Christians were the chosen representative people, and they were persecuted and scattered throughout the territory ruled by Rome. Notice that the vision did not focus on any of the other great empires, such as Egypt, India, and China, that ruled other parts of the world, only those that ruled over his chosen representatives. Daniel's interpretation skimmed quickly over these empires and focused most of its attention on the lower legs and feet. They were different from the other kingdoms. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. Rather than a new metal, this kingdom was symbolized by iron mixed with clay. We already saw that iron symbolized Rome. In several passages of Scripture, clay is used to represent God's chosen people, and in Jeremiah 18, 2-6, clay symbolizes Israel in rebellious apostasy. Thus the feet and toes symbolize a continuation of the Roman Empire, but as a mixture of political iron and religious clay. Daniel's interpretation emphasizes that the various ethnicities of this kingdom would not really be united as the previous empires were. As you saw iron mixed with clay, they will mingle with the seed of man, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. Although there is a distinct division between the other empires, the Roman iron blends into the iron mixed with clay of the lower legs. History tells us that during the Dark Ages, the Roman Empire evolved gradually into the nations of Europe. The various ethnicities fiercely competed with one another with constantly changing borders, but they were bound together by a common Christian culture. This hybrid empire ruled during the medieval Dark Ages, one of the most oppressive periods of human history. The thumbnail sketch of history provided by the vision shows that in some sense this empire continues to rule until God intervenes to bring this age to an end. A stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. In the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and it shall last forever. Let's summarize what we have learned from this video that could be applied to the book of Revelation. First of all, the timeline of the vision started at the time that Daniel saw it, and extended in linear fashion to the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. It included a review of history, but not just any history. It focused on empires and powers that impacted what God has been doing on earth through his chosen representatives. But the major focus is not on the review of history, but on the final crisis and resolution. Daniel introduced his interpretation of the vision, saying, God in heaven reveals secrets, and he has made known what will be in the latter days. The latter days are the time when the enemy oppressors and the demonic forces that empower them will be destroyed by a stone cut out without hands. This in itself shows that this is a cosmic conflict. Although Satan is not mentioned by name in Daniel, we know from Revelation 12 that he is the mastermind behind the oppressive forces. God gave the vision to communicate in advance that he knows our plight and he will deliver us. Daniel's second vision in chapter 7 took place in the first year of Belshazzar, the last king of Babylon. Daniel saw 4 great beasts coming up from the sea, each different from the other. He saw a winged lion, a bear with 3 ribs in its mouth, a leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings, and a dreadful and terrible beast with huge iron teeth. 10 horns emerged out of the 4th beast, and then a little horn emerges and grows until it is greater than his fellows. An angel explains that these great beasts are 4 kingdoms with a 5th horn power that emerges from the 4th kingdom. These are the same oppressive kingdoms that we saw in the metal image of chapter 2. A full study shows that each of the 4 apocalyptic visions of Daniel cover the same span of history. The first beast was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Its wings were plucked off, and it was made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. By the time of King Belshazzar, the power and glory of Babylon had diminished, and this is reflected by the lion, the king of the beasts, who has lost his wings, has to stand on 2 legs, and has a human heart. The second beast was like a bear, which was told, Arise, devour much flesh. This emphasizes the vast extent of the Persian Empire, with the 3 ribs in its mouth symbolizing kingdoms that it devoured. The third beast was like a leopard, which had 4 heads. The leopard symbolizes the Greek Empire that began when Alexander the Great conquered Persia, and the 4 heads emphasize the division into Hellenistic kingdoms that took place after Alexander's death. The 4th beast was dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. The raw power of this beast is an apt representation of the brutal Roman Empire. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth boasting arrogantly. Like the iron thighs of the metal image that slowly evolved into feet made of iron mixed with clay, the dreadful beast grows 10 horns, and these are dominated by a little horn that develops into the most terrible power of all. As in the first vision, these symbolize the Roman Empire as it morphs into a hybrid kingdom that is a mixture of nations, symbolized by 10 horns, and an apostate religious power, symbolized by the horn with eyes and a mouth, that speaks against the Most High and oppresses his holy people. There are a lot of details that we will analyze in later videos, but there are several things that we can already learn that apply to the book of Revelation. First of all, we again see that the chronological timeline of the vision begins at the time it was given. This suggests that the chronology of Revelation also begins not at the birth of Jesus or at the cross, but when it was written in the AD 90s as the apostolic age was coming to an end. Since the narrative in Daniel 7 begins with a brief linear history of the major powers that oppressed God's followers from the time of Daniel, we would also expect Revelation to briefly portray the history of God's followers from the time it was written until the time of the end. In video 6, I will present the evidence that the 7 churches of chapters 2 and 3 present that history. An angel appeared to Daniel to help him understand what he had seen. Most of the explanation has to do with the 4th beast, and especially the 10 horns and the wicked horn that arose as the imperial Roman Empire wound down. The wicked horn power will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people, and try to change times and law. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. This part of the vision is crucial for understanding Revelation 12 and 13, where the same beasts and horns are blended into a 7-headed beast arising from the sea. This beast also wars against the saints for the same time, times, and half a time. In video 44, we will see that this symbolizes the terrible oppression that took place during the Dark Ages with the Crusades, the Inquisition, and brutal religious wars. But we will also see that both Daniel and Revelation focus on this period in order to provide a prototype of the final crisis, in which a modern version of the oppressive medieval church is determined to force everyone to obey her edicts. We'll have a lot more to study from Daniel 7 when we get to Revelation chapter 13. But Daniel 7 also predicts God's resolution. Suddenly the scene changes, and we see a view of the heavenly courtroom. Thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. The judgment was set, and the books were opened, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. This language is mirrored in Revelation 14, where the first of 3 angels announces, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come." We'll have a lot more to study to determine what kind of a judgment this is, and how it compares with the final judgment that is portrayed in Revelation 20. The third vision in Daniel chapter 8 takes place in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, when the Babylonian Empire was essentially over. It starts with a view of a ram with 2 horns. One horn was higher than the other. This time an angel clearly identifies the ram as the Persian Empire. The ram which you saw, having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. As Daniel watched, suddenly a male goat came from the west. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece. Then he came to the ram and ran at him with furious power, and broke his 2 horns, and trampled him. We notice first that these are the same empires that appeared in the previous 2 videos, but now explicitly identified as Persia and Greece. And in contrast with the vision of chapter 7, which used fierce wild animals to symbolize the oppressive empires, chapter 8 uses domestic animals which were used as sacrifices in the Hebrew sanctuary service. We will see that there are other significant references to the sanctuary and the sacrificial system in Daniel chapter 8. After the Persian ram is trampled by the Greek goat, its large horn, identified as the first king, Alexander the Great, is broken, and in place of it 4 notable horns came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. This symbolizes the breakup of the Greek Empire into Hellenistic kingdoms that ruled during the intertestamental period. But instead of shifting to a distinct new animal to symbolize Rome, out of one of the horns came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great, and it grew up to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the stars. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, in other words, Jesus. And by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. This important passage shows that the Roman power, and particularly the medieval Roman Catholic era that was symbolized by the iron and clay feet in the first vision and the wicked horn in the second vision, did more than just persecute and oppress those who refused to submit to her authority. The doctrinal distortions of the Dark Ages interfered with Christ's ministry to his followers. These include the doctrine of salvation through the sacraments, confession to the priests, the authority of tradition over the Bible, the worship of the saints, and others which combined to put Jesus in the background. Even the angels watching on were shocked. Daniel heard two holy ones talking to each other. One of them asked, "How long will the events of this vision last? How long will the rebellion that causes desecration stop the daily sacrifices?" But another angel reassured Daniel with one of the most cryptic prophecies in the Bible. For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. The angel Gabriel himself assures us that this vision is not just a metaphorical history lesson. The vision refers to the time of the end. It refers to many days in the future. And it is vital information for our understanding of Revelation. As we study the cosmic conflict in Revelation 12 through 14, we will see parallel scenes. Just like the satanic horn in Daniel 8, which takes the controversy all the way to the host of heaven, dragging down some of the stars, in Revelation 12, war breaks out in heaven when Jesus returns after his death and resurrection and is challenged by Satan, the great dragon. The dragon is cast to the earth, and his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. The great apostasy and persecution of the Dark Ages that is symbolized by the satanic horn in Daniel 8 is symbolized in Revelation 12 by the great dragon Satan, who pursues a virtuous woman who symbolizes the faithful church. And the cleansing of the sanctuary that takes place after the 2,300 evenings and mornings finds its parallel in the messages of powerful angels in Revelation 14 and 18. The final Babylon, who claims to be the body of Christ, is exposed as a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit. Babylon is contrasted with God's faithful followers who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. The final vision in chapters 10 through 12 follow the same pattern, but instead of using symbolic language, it presents a cryptic, confusing, but literal narrative. Beginning in the first year of the Persian Empire, it outlines the first few kings and the defeat of Persia by Alexander the Great. This remarkably accurate account continues with a long and detailed narrative of the wars between the king of the north and the king of the south, competing powers who both oppressed God's faithful followers from the 4th century BC until the end of history. Within the long narrative, there are words and phrases that correlate with Daniel's earlier vision and with other Bible verses. These are landmarks that enable us to pinpoint the crucial historical events and transitions down through the centuries. Specific language in this vision will help us unravel the mysteries of the 7 trumpets, the locust army, and the 7 thunders in Revelation. Daniel 11 and 12 are admittedly the most difficult sections of Daniel to understand, and I won't go into detail now, but I will include a link in the description to an article from the book A Revelation of Jesus that gives some valuable insight. The book of Daniel, along with the book of Revelation, has a lot to say about God's enemies. But like Revelation, Jesus is the center. He is the rock that will fill the whole earth. He is the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He is the Prince of the host who will cleanse his sanctuary. And he will stand up and awaken many who sleep in the dust to everlasting life. If you've been blessed by this video, please share it with people you know who are interested in knowing more about prophecy and more about Jesus.